can understand the stuff I talk about, economically speaking. When I try to educate people about supply and demand and how do you define progress in regard to supply and demand. Supply and demand has everything to do with progress. It's all about economic progress for everybody across the board. It creates prosperity across the board. We're working together as a family, as a society, a civilized society, a civilization. We're working together, okay, to make our lives easier. So we produce all kinds of mechanizations. That's the industrial age and all this stuff. So we work together as a collective, a collaboration to make our lives easier. That's what it's all about. And so that's how we've come up with all the stuff we have that's made our lives easier. That, you know, all these luxury items, automobiles and luxury liners and jet airplanes, all this stuff, this really cool stuff, computers and smartphones and everything that's not negative. I mean, it's good. God is okay with it. He's the one that gave us the brain, the wherewithal, the imagination to come up with every invention. In fact, I just came up with a really sweet one recently. I'm really, really excited about it. I'm gonna discuss it with my nephew, who is getting a high degree in engineering and physics over here at Chico State University, and so he and I, maybe work together on something. I'll see, but I'm really very excited. It's fun for me. I just thank God for giving me a brain, and having an imagination. The ability to think is just, God, of all the things I value, it's right up there, man. It's a lot of fun, dreaming. It's just great, and often dreams come to fruition if God willing, primarily, I guess, that at the end of the day, that's it. God willing, it'll come to fruition. But I'm more excited about the fact that it has something to do with public safety. So it could really make people's lives better in a very tangible way. And so, the whole idea of making a lot of money, I mean, that's just not going to turn a guy like me on. That's just not going to motivate, incentivize me at all. I'm disgusted. The idea of being profligate and living a more luxurious life, one side of me says, yeah, that sounds really nice. I can dig it, man. I'm all for it. I'm all for everybody having that. But I'm not for it until I see the woman's being bound up. And I'm feeling good about Trump's presidency. I'm feeling good about the direction he's going. I like what he's doing. I like Donald Trump. I believe that he's working for we the people. I don't care what anybody says. I believe he's the blue collar guy. I really do. And I'm down. I'm all in. And you know what? You give the man a chance. He knows what he's doing. He's calling out the insurance companies. Good. Subsidies and all this crap. Hey, Donald, save the country $50 billion a year. Yoink. There goes Section 8 housing money, HUD money. Okay, take it. They have squandered it. They pissed it away. They've exacerbated the problem and say, here's how we're going to fix it. No, we're not going to be merciless and throw all these people out in the cold. Okay, but we're giving the landlord 30 days notice. And we're saying, no, the buck stops here. These people are going into whatever situation. I mean, who needs to hold the title to the properties, buy them housing? A lot of people are happy with very little. A lot of times a modular house, like that's a new mobile home. They look just like houses. You put them in a park. It's a loophole. They don't have to pay high property taxes. It's just a registration fee because it's on a chassis. So, there's a lot of things that can be done here. Whoever holds the title doesn't matter. I mean, give them stuff. Who cares? Grants and stuff like that. What's wrong with that? It's going to be fiscally conservative and prudent. Okay, and I could do the math with you because it'd be incalculably cheaper in the long run. I mean, Section 8 over 20 years, you know how much that is? That's $1 trillion right there. Okay, so yeah, it'd be a lot cheaper just to buy people places. All right, a lot cheaper. A hell of a lot cheaper. So yeah, it might sound radical, but you know what? That's how weird this world is. Fiction is not as strange as reality. Reality is stranger than fiction, I guess is how it's said. But no, it's true, man. I mean, and it's so controversial. This is what, when you discover just how controversial the idea of actually solving problems is, because people's jobs revolve around the problems. They require the problems to persist, to be maintained, and preferably proliferate, because that gives them greater job security. It's sick and twisted. It's insane. We've all bought into it. I'm not sitting here being exempt. I'm stuck in this crap hole too. Remember, I got to spend money. I got to go make money. I got to pay bills. Just because I hate money doesn't mean I'm exempt from being forced. I'm a slave too. Anybody that's born with the cost of living is a slave, rich and poor alike. We're all just thrust into this crap hole. This stuff is foisted on us from birth, this cost of living tax. By who? By frickin' madmen, monsters, freaks, maniacs, genocidal maniacs at that. That's who has just, run us down the wrong path. But, when I think about supply and demand, I think about the VCR. And if you want to know what should have happened to your dollar, you look at the VCR. In the early 80s, $1,100 of early 80s money. I worked for a man that told me he paid that for it, a VCR back then. Okay, people only could afford to rent them once in a while. Okay, that's the way it worked. You wonder how these, Blockbuster stores got started. I mean, that was the start of some of these places. They were renting the VCR. So 80s money, so the equivalent in terms of, like, let's say housing dollars, relative to housing dollars, that $1,100 back then would have bought you a house, let's see, $100,000 house in that same neighborhood would cost probably $750,000 if we were talking about Santa Cruz, my hometown. That same house I could have got for $100,000 in the early 80s, mid 80s even. My wife and I looked at a house, a very nice neighborhood in Santa Cruz, $120,000 in the mid 80s. Prospect Heights neighborhood of Santa Cruz. Very nice, near a school. This old man, we met at the owner of the house, and his wife had died and he was selling the house. That house easily, $750,000, easily today. So let's see, so that's approximately 7 times as much, so that'd be like $7,000. A VCR costs the equivalent of $7,000. Now the VCR went from 1,100 to approximately 100, and you get a DVD player with it now. So let's see. So that's a double whammy. It's exponential here. So I'm trying to do the math real quickly in my head here. Help me out, but this is dramatic and profound. What has happened to your VCR dollars? So it's gone down approximately 90% in cost. So if we add, let's see, 90%, that's, 1/9. So let's say it costs 1/10, approximately, 1/9, 1/10 of what it did then. If it cost 9 times more than 1,100, what's that? $10,000. It would have cost $10,000. Then add that times 7, so it'd be $70,000. Did you follow me there on that math? It's approximation. So today, if what happened with the cost of housing had happened with the VCR, in terms of market manipulation and price fixing, you'd be paying $70,000 for a VCR today. Okay, do you understand? That is contrary. That is diametric. That is the opposite of supply and demand, free market capitalism. The opposite of progress. That is regress. That's anti-progress. That's retrogressive. Okay, that's the opposite of what you want. You want the worth of your currency to do one thing, to go up in worth. And the only time we the people should tolerate the worth of our currency going up, okay, would be during a supply disruption. Okay? That's the only time. The only time is during a supply disruption. And then only temporarily until that disruption is resolved, till we can rally around it as a civilization, as a civilized society, okay, as a family, and say, no, there's a shortage of this very important commodity, then we got to get busy and start producing it. We get it. So then we have an abundance all of a sudden. And it's easier and easier today to build houses with state-of-the-art tools and equipment, heavy equipment, all this stuff. Okay, you could put it together a house like this, okay? Houses should have done what the VCR did. You understand? How many VCRs could you afford to own? So then consider how many houses you could afford to have houses all over the planet. A dozen, as many as you want. Of course, you're going to have to figure out how to take care of them. But you understand what I just want to get this through to people. Okay, so don't let anybody tell you otherwise. You can know for certainty what I'm telling you is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It's fact based. It comes from men like Adam Smith, a guy that devoted his life to the study of economic principles, to getting to the bottom of things, and then to conveying it in nuts and bolts way, but nevertheless showing all the evidence of what he knows along the way. Okay, and what he came up with at the end of the day was that, look, face the facts, everybody, that labor, the labor force, a willing workforce, is every nation's greatest asset, hands down, bar none. Okay, that's it, end of story right there. Because everything gets done if you have that, okay, that willing workforce, everything. And conversely, absolutely nothing gets done if you don't have it. You'd have nothing. You'd be in rags, living in caves. Okay, that's it. You'd be lucky if you could start a fire, okay, a campfire. Okay, that's the reality. If we didn't work together and have what we have, all the technology, all the infrastructure, all the things, the technology we marvel at, toys on Mars and all this kind of stuff, okay, then, we got nothing. We got nothing without humans. And it all stems from God. God gave us the wherewithal, our imagination, our ability to think. So at the end of the day, we all just have to be very grateful to God, our owner, and just show it by going out and being his friend. And it's not, like Jesus said, his yoke is easy, his load is light. He's not a harsh taskmaster. He wants us to be happy. And you can't do that by making, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt do that. I mean, look, there's some stuff that, yes, you transgress this law, and your life is going to be a living hell, because God's telling you where he's warning you, where you're going from here. It's going to get really hot in the kitchen. If you deny your conscience, you deny yourself. You essentially deny your Holy Spirit, the Spirit of truth, the Spirit of godliness that God gave us all. And you deny that, then you've got a big price to pay, and you're on the highway to Hades. And myself and so many others are out there trying to say, no, I don't go there. Don't follow these people into hell. Okay, you don't want their blood on your head or on your hands. So by being God's friend, you go out and you're a herald. You're a watchman on the wall, and you're just telling people, look, there are certain things that are true. 2 + 2 = 4, always does, always will. And so God is clear that this is very important to me, that you do this thing. Okay, so you can't do these things and do this thing at the same time. This is the whole you can't serve two masters thing. Okay, so if you want at the end of the day come to the agreement that 2 + 2 = 4, because you're an honest human being that values their conscience, their integrity, their honor, their soul, their conscience, then you've got to stay on the right path. And then it's guaranteed, it's promised that, no matter what your other little sins are, the excruciating minutiae, your personal private life and whatever, okay, if you confess, okay, before God, particularly before God, some stuff should only be, even though I'm kind of a big mouth and I talk about a lot of personal private stuff, I probably ought not to. Okay, it doesn't feel good. It's humiliating, but humiliation never killed anybody. It's just part of personal growth and all that stuff. I mean, I can remember years ago, I attended this 12-step program. This had to be 20 years ago at least, and down in the Santa Cruz area in Capitola. And it was so funny. This group of guys was sitting around and talking about stuff, and this one guy chirped in. It had nothing to do with why we were at this meeting, but he said, he's really struggling with this idea that he couldn't get away from being, for lack of a better term, I really don't like to say this, but it's an anonymous group of guys, but you could talk, I'm not saying his name, but he said that he was having a hard time. He was a bit of a sex addict, okay, just to be blunt. And I was the only guy there really that I remember actually kind of cracking up, okay, because I really genuinely thought it was funny at the time. And I don't know why I thought it was funny that this guy was having this issue. I guess because I had never had any sort of issue like that before. And so I thought it was funny. But, life goes on, and you learn that, hey, it's not always so funny when people are serious. But, I just didn't have a self-control issue in that respect. So I forget how the guy said it, but it was in a comedic way. But he was actually making a confession. He really was reaching out. He really wanted help. And, God knows, I hope that he got it. I hope he got the relief that he was looking for, the reprieve. But this is not the kind of sin, I don't believe, that's going to get us to hell. I mean, let's face it, believe what you will about different passages and teachings of Christ in the Bible in regard to this subject, sexuality. I mean, this is one of those nebulous, ambiguous, ambivalent gray areas that nobody can judge another person on, okay? Because this adultery thing is very vague. I mean, are we to condemn everybody that's been divorced and remarried and say, no, you're living in an adulterous relationship because it's